Hello, everyone. Testing, testing. Can you hear me okay? Hoping this will mean the sound is good. Can you all see me? Can you hear me? Oh, I hope so. Okay. Daryl, see and hear, that's good too. Hey, okay. Well, this may be, hopefully the third time will be the charm. Next time I do it, I won't have to give a new link for everyone to go to. You know, I love gardening. I'm getting better at it, but technology obviously is not my strength at the moment. So let's see who all we have here. Hey, Dana. Hi. Dana Hoover, Stephanie Lilybridge from Colorado. Oh, nice. Audra, I'm going to butcher your name, Bruzizi, I think. Carla Grant. Ooh, North Carolina. Nice. Monica, Katie's Garden. Ooh, that sounds like a nice thing. Daryl Farney, Stephanie Lilybridge. Great. I'm glad you all can hear me. And thank you so much for watching. I think my parents are also watching, although they haven't said anything yet. Anyway, I thought I would start off by talking about, okay, how do you say it? Audra, you're going to have to be super phonetic. Like, I used to sing at a choir, and like they would do the upside down E's and stuff and all that kind of thing. And everybody say hi to my friend Chrissy with Along the River Homestead. She's our moderator tonight, and she's awesome and hilarious, and definitely check out her channel, I'd say. Why is it not focusing? Focus, camera. Focus on me. Well, I guess we'll just have a foggy camera. Someday everything will be right. Anyway, so at the end of every season, or at least last year I did this, where I like to take stock of how things have gone as lessons learned for me, to try to figure out what I want to do differently next year, what worked, what didn't work. And I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on how things are going for you in your garden. There we go. I think it got better that time. Yeah, seems to be focused now. So I thought I'd talk about both the winter sowing process, and if you aren't familiar with winter sowing, it's basically a process of growing things in milk jugs outside over the winter and early spring instead of indoors under grow lights. It's just a different way of growing seedlings. So I thought I'd take stock of that as well as some other gardening things, because I definitely direct sowed plenty of plants in the ground as seedlings and as seeds. And hi, Urban Girl Gardening. Nice to see you on here. And Norma Living Good. Hello. And, you know, normally I do this in my journal. I say, oh, this is how it went and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm still doing that. Like my husband was like, what are you doing today? I'm like, I'm catching up on everything because, you know, it's good. I think it's good to take stock and to think about something in the top corner is a focus. Focus on me, camera. You want me. Maybe if I just make the background super boring, it'll have no choice but to like me. There we go. I think that did it. Good job, Dad. my dad used to be in videography and photography, and he knew the trick. So that's awesome. Thanks, Dad. I think it's in focus now. A little too focused. um, Caligatrippy. I never say your name right, but hello. And Swarmstead. Hey, Swarmstead. I saw you on the live yesterday for Adrian. And so yeah, I thought I'd go over the lessons learned for the garden. And I'd love to hear some tips you have, also things that you've learned. And I'm probably going to do this again after the summer season is over. But see, now it's going back out again. Maybe I just need to like make out with the camera to make it stay in focus. Yeah, I think that'll do. Not too focused. Calgal at RPI. Ah. Okay, that makes sense. It's like when you're reading a license plate, sometimes you're not quite sure what they're trying to say, and sometimes it's a little too obvious, but yeah. So I have some notes here, and I think the biggest note that I've had is, first of all, I want to thank everyone who has commented on my videos, has given their support and all of that. I really appreciate all the advice I got from all of you, because a lot of the challenges I ran across this year were things I was able to quickly pivot and solve because of help from you. And there's, of course, some things that I want to do differently. Okay, cool. In Troy, is that a state, a city? That not a state, obviously. Troy's not a state. What state is that in, or what location is that in? And you know, one of the biggest challenges I had, obviously, or Jen will work. That's probably easier for me not to get wrong. If you've noticed in my videos, I am terrible at pronouncing things, especially flower titles. That's like the bane of my, if I could make up names for flowers to not have to worry about getting it right, maybe I'll start doing that. I'll just start calling them the pretty pink flowers or something, because yeah, I keep getting that wrong. But oh yeah, oh see, so you know where that is. Oh, you were asking about it. I get it. Oh, Chrissy, you asked about the baby rabbits. They died, unfortunately. They did not survive. I think either the mom got killed, or maybe just moving them, she couldn't find the nest. They lived for probably 4 or 5 days, and they did look like they were getting bigger. Of course, I could have been imagining that. I only checked the nest like once every other day, and then I checked it. And my poor husband, I came in just sobbing. I think I was crying. He said, he didn't mean it in an insulting way, but he said I was crying like a little girl who just like had her hamster die or something, just like that horrible, so sad thing. And, you know, there's nothing else I could have done. So for those who missed it, one of the big challenges I had this year, which it was pretty unique to this year, was that I discovered, as a very lucky coincidence, that we had a termite challenge at our foundation. And so I had to have an exterminator come to treat the bottom of the house, the foundation of the house. And as I was looking around, pulling out things to make sure there was space for them to do the treatment, I saw that there was a nest of baby rabbits right next to the foundation. So he could have either stepped on them when he was doing the treatment, or, you know, they probably would have been poisoned when he was spraying it. So I really didn't feel comfortable leaving them there. So I moved them as close by as possible, kept all the materials with it, tried to add extra hay on, a little bit of extra dried grass on top because it was raining. And they did good for a few days, but I really don't think I could have made any other choice other than to move them, because they probably would have died anyway. So I'm okay with it, but I think lesson learned is try not to move bunnies if possible, because there's just no way to know what happened to them, right? Yeah, that's a fair point, Audra. You know, they might have just died anyway. You know, maybe when I moved them, it was too cold and too wet. Maybe the mother got poisoned. Who knows? Hi, Mary. Nice to see you. And Stormy Wund. stormy wind. So, but I think one of the lessons that I'm trying to learn, and oh yeah, we have woodchucks / groundhogs too. In fact, we call them the bobs because we don't know which one's a boy or a girl, but they're definitely a boy and girl because last year there were 2 of them, and this year there are 5, and 3 of them are very much not adult. And they live under the shed in our backyard. And I think I didn't know about the babies, and that's why they were able to get into the fence, because there are some little gaps that a full-size groundhog would have to climb the fence, which they can do, but like they just don't care enough to do that normally. But the babies were able to get through and taste the lettuce in my backyard bed, and it was all over after that, I think. So that leads me to one of my lessons learned, which is, 1, animals are creative and will find a way to get to food if they want it. And, you know, I'm not going to relocate them. Some states actually have laws against relocation. I haven't checked in Maryland, but I don't feel right poisoning them. My dogs do go in the backyard and chase them, and now my dogs get plenty of exercise because they come out of the back porch, fenced-in yard, back porch, and they just right to the right towards the shed. And they haven't caught any yet, and the groundhogs don't go too far from the shed itself. Yeah, and a live trap is a good way to do it if you want. It may come to a point with the groundhogs where it's just too much for our garden, and you know, but most of the backyard is where I'm growing my cool weather veggies, right? The lettuces, as well as some green beans and my kale, although that's a summer veggie. Well, sort of spring / summer. The front yard is where I have the tomatoes and peppers and the squash and cucumber and eggplant and all that stuff. And the backyard is fenced in, and I think they're just too nervous, at least during the daytime, to go through that fence to go to the front yard thus far. Mary, I tried winter sowing for the first time this year because of you. I only tried lettuce and kale, which worked well. Next year, I will try other vegetables as well. Thank you. Oh, that's very nice. I'm glad to hear that, Mary. You know, winter sowing for me really made my life so much easier when I was a new gardener my first year, because there's so many questions. Like, I'm a person who wants to get the schedule right for when to start hardening, when to start planting them. And with winter sowing, you don't forget them, right? But you put them in the jugs and you let Mother Nature decide when they should sprout. And, you know, you harden them off when you're ready to transplant them. And you don't really harden them off. You kind of acclimate them. You give them a couple days to be used to, you know, the weather outside with the too late for only 4 things grew. Well, okay, so this wasn't on my lessons learned thing, but this is something I would like to talk about, which is the difference between how fast things grow when they're winter sown versus indoor growing. And a lot of times, and I'm a member and a moderator, in fact, of one of them, winter sowing groups on Facebook. And there's a lot of people who comment that their tomatoes are not as big as their indoor tomatoes were last year, or the ones they see at the store. And the reason for that is, and it's not logical, if you've gardened growing seedlings indoors the entire time, this isn't logical for you, right? But basically, or not something you would think of, but basically, plants that are grown in winter sowing jugs are warmer in the jugs than the ambient air outside, but they're not going to grow as fast as indoor temperatures have them grow. They're going to sprout a little bit later, and when it's super cold, they're not going to grow. They're going to sort of stay dormant as seedlings, and on warm days they grow a little bit more. But it basically means that up until the time you transplant, or pretty close to the time you transplant, they're going to be smaller, generally smaller than the seedlings you would grow indoors or buy from the box store. But the difference is, once you transplant them, they catch up really fast, because once it's warm enough, they catch up fine. So I really think that it's sort of confusing to people who haven't done that before. And, oh yeah, My biggest is I haven't transplanted them yet. Yeah, I still have a couple of jugs that I have not transplanted. It's hard to get from the stage of opening the jugs, getting them used to the weather, and then actually transplanting them. I find that step seems to be super hard because one, you have extra work involved. Two, you have to make sure there's space for it. Three, you have to have water and stuff to water them when you do it. Like, you have to set aside time for it. I totally get that. Let's see. I'm just scrolling up real quick to see what I missed. Daryl Farney says, first year winter sower here, bigger success than I thought. That's awesome. Happiest seedlings, coneflowers, regular and tall. That is fantastic. One that surprised me, scarlet flax, will grow more next year. That's wonderful. So I went through looking at what grew for me this year using winter sowing and what did not grow, and trying to figure out the reasons why they didn't grow. So I actually had 10 failed containers this year, which is about twice the amount, almost 3 times the amount as last year. To be fair, I grew 3 to 4 times the amount of jugs this year. I used like way more than I grew last year. So your failure rate can exponentially go up, right? But the ones that I have I've looked over the themes, and at first I thought, well, was it a soil type? Because I used 2 main types of soil. I used a Miracle-Gro brand that's organic called Nature's Care, I think. I'll have to look at the actual name. And then I used Happy Frog, which is, I forgot the name of the company that does it. And then also the Ocean Forest one, whatever that one's called. And honestly, the ones that failed were more the Happy Frog ones, but I don't think that it had anything to do with the soil, because I noticed there were 3 main reasons I think that any jugs failed this year. Number 1 reason, the seeds may not have been viable. They may have been too old. One of my jugs was an obvious one. I did that 16-year-old beefsteak tomato seeds, and didn't work. I kind of suspected that might be the case, but I'd been hoping, but it definitely didn't work. Then another one that I winter sowed that didn't work was from someone who I got from a seed exchange like last year. I don't know how old they were when they put them in the envelope, and the white avens, they never sprouted. They didn't sprout for me last year, and so I can only assume that if they didn't sprout 2 years in a row, and I did the proper amount of time for winter stratification and everything, that it probably has to do with the seeds in that case. Another thing that is a common issue, and I think this was my biggest problem last year, was, Ocean Forest is awesome, Chrissy. I agree. Yes, Coast of Maine is awesome, and I think next year I'm going to use a Spoma, definitely. What I was saying was, one of my biggest problems this year was the tape around some of the jugs didn't work, and it was actually the jugs that I recycled from last year. And while I think it's good to reuse jugs to the extent that you can, my mom and dad give me a plethora of empty water and milk jugs every year. At least they have the last 2 years, and I'm sure they will again next year. Right, Dad? And so I'm just not going to, I'm going to recycle them, but I'm not going to save old jugs for next year, because I found that the ones that didn't do really well this year, close to half of them were old reused jugs that I think either were misshapen so the tape didn't stick quite right, or who knows exactly what. I did wash them, so I don't think that was it. And then the third reason was, I think, either drainage issues or not enough water. Like, when the tape comes off, it just dries out. Let's see. Andrea, yeah, Happy Frog stayed wetter, and I think seeds rotted a bit more in the mix we made ourselves. Ocean Forest. And you know what? None of the ones on the list that failed were Ocean Forest. So it's very possible that, and also the ones that, now I can't blame Happy Frog for this, because I don't know why, but I had terrible problems with slugs this year, and with my peppers in particular. And I'm going to do stuff to like block off the top with cheesecloth so that water can still get in and air can still go in and out. The slugs can't get in, and see if that helps next year. But I honestly think that moisture content that Happy Frog keeps in that soil contributed to them being able to live in there very easily. Wet, either too wet or not enough water. Yeah, it's like you just can't get it right, Monica? You just can't get it right. And I kind of have comfort in this because I mentioned him like every time I do a video almost. Charles Dowding is this great British gardener, and he said that he refuses to recommend a particular soil type or potting mix to anybody. And the reason he refuses to recommend it to anybody is because they seem to change the formula from year to year, and that one year it might be the best potting mix in the world, and then the next year they get a new supplier. And we know there have been supply chain issues with COVID, right? It has caused real problems with the supply chain for everybody. And so who knows what the different companies had to do to get the supplies they needed this year. And so, you might have a mix that works really well one year and then might not work well the next year, and it might have nothing to do with you. It might be because they changed part of their formula, right? Yes, we love Charles. It got green and then molded. And I don't think having a little bit of mold or green on top is bad, because like when I emptied out my pepper jugs to transplant them, there was mold. There was like green around the outside of the container, or inside lining of the container. And they were healthy other than the slugs. So, I think some moisture, when you have that greenhouse effect in a jug, you're going to have a little bit of that moldy green stuff happen, but you don't want too much of it, right? So I think what I'm going to do next year, more moss on Happy Frog. See, the other thing that I found with the Happy Frog is, and I have, let's see, I potted up this plant that I got from Home Depot, exotic angel plant. This is called Pixie Dixie Ivy, and I just love it because look at those beautiful leaves. Aren't they so pretty? I love this thing. And it came in one of those little containers, and I potted it up, and the soil is Happy Frog. Now, I haven't watered it in 2 days. I water them usually on Sundays. But the soil is not, I have to push down to get it to flake. It kind of created a hard crust. And I think it did that a lot inside of my pots for winter sowing this year. And I think that hard crust made it harder for, maybe it was like bat guano or something that created like a surface that was hard, but I think it made it harder for seeds to sprout potentially. So yeah, who knows? I think next year, now that I know enough about how to mix my own potting mix, I'm just going to make my own potting mix next year. The challenge usually in the spring is that for potting mix, you need to do a proper like Mel's Mix style potting mix where you have several types of compost, you have plant food, which, that's easy enough. Okay, my dog has found her squeaky toy. Plant food, and perlite and vermiculite, or peat moss, or coconut coir. Basically, to have all those things, you kind of have to get them ahead at the end or during the middle of the gardening season, because the box stores and even the nurseries will not have much in stock over the winter for when you are winter sowing. So if you plan on making your own mix like I'm going to do next year, definitely buy 1 to 2 bags of each ingredient you need, maybe 1 to 2 cubic feet of each thing you want. Like I prefer worm compost, Coast of Maine lobster compost. If you can find mushroom compost, which I find in the spring, but it's gone within a couple of weeks usually at the places. Like I went once, I went back 3 days later, it was all sold out to the one that I go to. And then I like the leaf grow because it's a good filler. That's a leaf compost that Maryland produces. And try to use local ingredients if you can. I try to make my own compost, but I might, it's just the two of us in the house. Lily, what are you doing digging? She's digging in the carpet. Just the two of us. We don't produce enough material to have a lot of compost. So I have to outsource a lot of my materials. My dad, J. Charles Wielden, 12 1-gallon empty water bottles and boxes for first requester. Me. um, so yeah, I think that was kind of one observation was, I don't know for sure that soil was the problem, but since I don't know what manufacturers use and who they source for their ingredients, I can at least know who I'm sourcing for my ingredients. Granted, I don't know how safe each ingredient I get is because I don't have like disclosure forms that I'm going to go searching for them. Although now that I think about it, I might search their disclosures, their sustainability disclosures. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, you guys. So those are some of my conclusions for the failed ones. And broader lessons learned, I think, are, and how many do we have watching right now? 33? That's awesome. Yay! I'm so excited to see all of you on here. So my experiment of spacing seeds, where I did space them appropriately, of having only one seed per hole. So if I want to grow 6 plants, I might plant 8 or 10 seeds in a jug, assuming 8 or 10 holes, but only individual seeds in each one. I think that worked really well for me this year. For the ones where I did space them out appropriately. The downside is I still had really good quality seeds, and so almost all of them sprouted. So I think I will have to adjust it slightly and be willing to have less sprout. And, when I want 6 plants, maybe plant 8 seeds, so that if I then end up with 8 plants, it's okay. It's not like I'm going to have 14 like I was doing last time. Always 1 per hole, yes. And the reason why you do 1 per hole, especially for winter sowing, is when you go to transplant the seedlings, I don't have the heart to pinch them off, to be honest. I don't have the heart to kill one of them because they got going and they're healthy looking. Now, if they're not healthy looking, that's different. But, if you're going to separate those seedlings, their roots will be intertwined with each other if you plant them one on top of the other. But if you plant them a little bit apart, their roots will be a little intertwined underneath, but you can much easier separate them and get the vast majority of the roots for each plant, which gives them less work to do once you've transplanted them. So I'm definitely going to do that. And along with that, I did do some mass plantings for herbs and like native flowers I had. And I think that I'm not sure what I think about the hunk of seedling transplanting thing. The hunk of seedling is basically where you just scatter all the seeds on, like a lot of these seeds. Like someone was saying, there's certain seeds are like just dust. Like you cannot differentiate without a microscope which seeds are which. And so you end up with 30 coming up or 15 or 20 coming up. And then you just cut them and plant the hunk of seedlings. The problem is I don't like... I feel like each seedling deserves its own life, so I try to separate each of them, and they can do okay, but I think it takes them longer to recover when you do that. So I haven't quite figured out the right solution. Maybe, one thing I did do that I liked, that maybe is what I'll do here this next time, is for the beets, for example, that I grew by winter sowing before I transplanted. I planted 2 or 3 together, not on top of each other, but like in a little cluster. So maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll sprinkle a set, in 3 or 4 spots so that they can still be separated relatively easy. And I'll just plant those chunks then. Once you've done winter sowing for 1 year, it's funny because you have the beginner's luck the first year. And then the second year, you think you have it down. And I assumed that my kale, I planted a jug of kale seeds in a time that I normally wouldn't. I planted them in January because I normally start in February when I start planting mine for my area. I'm in zone 7A in Maryland. And our winter doesn't really get going till the end of January. January, you can still have some really warm temperatures. You can have some really, you can have stuff get into like the 70s. And then, the plants are going to sprout thinking it's spring. So I like to wait till February to plant anything in winter sowing jugs. And because I was doing my winter sowing 101 series, I did 1 container of kale in January, in like mid-January. And sure enough, it was warm enough in late January that the kale sprouted, and I didn't think to check my jugs. And we had a frost, and I didn't cover my jugs because, well, I just planted a few like a week or two ago, and I forgot that I had that one that I had planted in January. And I went out to check on the jugs, and sure enough, the seedlings were white. They were dying. They were mush, the ones that had sprouted when they shouldn't have. And I think that gives me 2 lessons, which is it's so technically you can winter sow at any time. It's called jug sowing in the summer. Technically, you can winter sow at any time. And I think a lot of people, including some of the groups I'm in, recommend winter sowing like starting in February through like March or April, depending on what zone you're in. But I think that timing matters more on a local scale once you become more experienced with winter sowing. Once you get to know the process for your location, then you can learn what works better for you. For example, this year, I waited until I planted my pepper seedlings in February and early March because they don't sprout until it's super warm for a long time. But I waited to plant my tomatoes and my zucchini and squash until, I think the zucchini and squash I didn't plant until April. And the tomatoes I planted in mid to late March. And the ones that I planted in late March actually did better because they didn't grow fast when they sprouted. They had, they took they didn't sprout earlier, when everything else was sprouting. They sprouted a little bit later, and it meant that they weren't touching the sides of the containers, and so then I didn't have as much problems with rot and with that kind of a thing. So I think just thinking about the timing of when things get warm enough for things to sprout. And if you have something that's like a summer vegetable that grows real fast, like a cucumber or a zucchini or squash or tomato, maybe wait until around the time that they would normally sprout in your jugs and plant them then, whenever that might be for your zone, once you get to know your zone well enough. Let's see. Well, I haven't paid attention to comments for a minute. Let me go here. Go back a little bit. Usually for Rebecca Cook, usually for houseplants, you want to add more perlite. Yeah, and I might, you're right, Rebecca Cook. I think I probably will go back and repot some of the ones that are just a little too solid. Layer half green, half brown in the soil on top and just keep putting them on top. Yeah, that would work. And you know, I do always plant more seedlings than I need, partly because I share a lot of them with my mom, and I do like going to seed swaps to give them away. And my mom is right. Viola is right. Soak them in water, and especially even if you don't take them out and soak them in water, if you just water the seedlings really well before you go to transplant them, they'll come apart easier. But if they're super bad, like dip them in water, not cold water, because that'll put them in shock, but put them in lukewarm water and they'll just come apart like butter. Sure. Yeah, Mary, I can make a video once I make my own potting mix. Sure. I do get a little concerned when I show how I do it because I'm still new at this and I hope I don't get it wrong, right? And so I'll definitely show what I experiment with, but then I'll put in the caveat that I'm testing it out, right? Because I don't want anyone to depend all of their success on only little old me. And I want people to be able to think for themselves a little bit or use their best judgment when it comes to what they think works best. But I'm happy to share this experience with all of you, as you know. Having Andrea Scanter, I have to say having low tunnels provided great insurance against the temperature fluctuations in Maryland. Yes, definitely. I had low tunnels as well that I used for my radishes and my beets early on when we had some deep freezes, and that was very much helpful for those times because they already had, and also having a low tunnel actually helps warm the soil for when you plant the things. So it doesn't just keep them warm at night, it also helps them be willing to grow during those colder temperatures instead of just kind of halt everything and wait till it warms up again. Daryl, I used colored zip ties, red for your frost sensitive stuff. Oh, plus you kept them separate from the others. Had to cover quite a bit with this strange spring. Yeah, this spring is so weird, and I have a couple of tips for when you're covering your plants, which is actually on my list of lessons, which is a sheet, like a lightweight sheet really isn't enough if you're going to have a heavy frost. You need to cover your jugs. And I recommend, I recommend covering everything, not just the frost sensitive ones. Like I covered my kale containers, everything, because when it gets deep enough of a freeze, they will, especially if they're small seedlings, if they haven't gotten very big, they're just more sensitive to the cold, even if they tend to be frost hardy. And especially if you have something in the 20s, if it's like 32, the kale might be okay. But if it gets, below 30 or close to 28, the deep freeze level, they definitely need covering. And so I'm a cautious person, and I basically cover everything. But I used just a sheet one time, and it was a flannel sheet, but it wasn't enough. And some of the stuff on the borders, the ones that had leaves touching the sides of the jugs and were on the outside of the set of the containers I'd covered, did have some frost damage. So I think in the future, I'm going to use my like throw quilts or like heavy lap blankets or things like that on them. And the other thing I did was, if it was raining or if we were having a lot of hail or like freezing rain, I also put a tarp over the whole thing with the blankets underneath to help keep them dry. But if it's snowing, you probably don't need to cover them at all, or at least not too much, because the snow is an insulator as well. Although, having it snow on the blankets is okay. So we're talking about temperatures. I am wearing, I had just started pulling out my shorts because it's been cold enough, right, to have to do shorts. And today I got out my sweater and my hoodies again. And I wore my boots to the farmer's market because it is currently 49 degrees outside, and it only got up to 52 today. And tonight it's supposed to get 45, and tomorrow night it's supposed to get 45 and be in the 50s, and then go back to the 70s and then higher. But it's so weird that even last year, I will say, after Mother's Day, it was pretty safe. We had some like stuff in the 60s, but this year has just been really, really weird for me in terms of this spring being really erratic in the temperatures. There is one benefit to the rain and the cold, though, which is, okay, that was a rumbling sound that you might have got, but there's no cicadas in the background right now. All the cicadas that are outside are quiet when it's cold and wet, and especially when it's wet. I think they need the warmth and the dryness of their wings to make their sound. So I was able to film my garden tour cicada sound free today, guys, which will go up in a couple days. They are cute. They're fun. But, cicadas are so stupid. They're just so stupid. I have, every time I turn around, there's a cicada stuck upside down somewhere. And with my winter sowing jugs, I haven't thrown them all away yet. And so there'll be a winter sowing jug sitting there, and there'll be like 3 cicadas like upside down in the jug, like not able to get out. And I'll have to tip it over and let them out. And they just, I guess they're not really meant to be smart, but they keep drowning and they keep getting stuck upside down in things. And of course I'm going to save them and flip them back over because I don't want anything to die. But it's frustrating because I don't want to have to be saving them all the time. And I feel like I have to be careful where I walk too. Yeah. And you know what? When the cicadas come back, when it gets warm enough, I will do a video just showing them as well as checking out the cicada pictures on Instagram. Yeah, I got up close to one. He was staring at me. He was like, I mean, once you know that they basically only eat tree sap and, you know, they're just basically horny and want to eat tree sap, I mean, it sounds like, I'm not going to say what it sounds like, but, you know, I mean, they're pretty harmless. They're pretty harmless. Rye 55 Roots, hello, I didn't see you come in. I placed all of my seedling trays, planters, and pots that are cold sensitive inside your greenhouse. Very happy. Yeah, yeah, and especially, you know, once you transplant things, it is a little more difficult. Like, my garden is just too big to cover with sheets all night long, and things are too tall. I mean, my tomatoes are now like this tall. I mean, too tall to get in the camera. So, see, the camera's not focusing on me again. Come on, camera. There we go. I think it likes my couch better than it likes me. My camera likes my couch better than it likes me. That's kind of messed up. Where was I going? Oh gosh, now my ADD. All I can think about is cameras. Get up in the camera. You will focus on me. Oh, I just have a webcam. I actually need to figure this out. There's plenty of technology out there for me to use. There we go. I think it's focusing on me again. We'll just pretend it is. Yep. Yep. I don't know. I'll just leave it alone. You know, I've never been a tech person. I'm not anti-tech. I love technology. I love to embrace it, but I've never really had to think about it before doing this channel. And hey, Silhouette Park Farm, good to see you. You know, I'm kind of cheap when it comes to this channel. I mean, I love you guys and I love producing this stuff, but I just refuse to put a ton of money into making a product that I'm not getting a ton of money out of at the moment. And although I'm getting so much value from it. So I think I need to just invest in a better webcam than I have right now, which is like leftover from the 90s or something like that. It's like a Logitech one. You know, I'm like, oh, I found this in the pile. This will work just fine. Okay, so for those who are here not for winter sowing stuff, and I'll go back to it later, but so this year I tried doing something to protect. One of my like 5 big goals for my garden this year was to protect my seedlings from cabbage worms, butterflies, and from the cucumber beetles for my cucumbers, which are growing now, and from the squash bugs and the vine borers. And I have used bridal tool. I'm going to become the bridal tool lady, you guys. I just bought like another 50 yards of 8-foot wide bridal tool. My whole tree, everything's going to be covered in bridal tool eventually. But I will tell you this. The bridal tool, until the squirrels or groundhogs or rats or mice or whatever it was tore it up for my kale, was working beautifully for the kale. And you know what I observed? For the cabbage moths, cabbage butterflies, they don't actually try to get inside of the mesh. They see that it's covered and they just fly off. They just don't have like time to worry about it. So as long as you have it reasonably contained and locked down enough, it doesn't have to be like Fort Knox level, they will fly off. I've watched it happen many times. They just fly right by my, they don't like land on it or anything. My Brussels sprout plant that I watch, my cabbage plants in my container, they just fly away. The other thing is, and I'll probably mention, I know I said this in the video that's going to come out in a couple days, but You'll see it. You won't care. I was 2 days ago, I was sitting in my chair like I often and want to do in my garden, and the squash plants that I have in containers that I have the bridle tool around are very close to where I sit. And I looked over, and there was a squash bug on top of the leaf, on top of the tool. And I go, oh, no, you don't. And I took some cardboard and I squished it and I killed it. But I think it worked. And here's why. Not the killing part, obviously, he's dead, she or he. But what worked was they like to lay eggs underneath the leaves of the plants. And the fact that it was on top meant that, one, I would see the eggs if they had laid it, and two, they couldn't get underneath to lay them. So that meant that it was a success so far. And I haven't seen any. Now, again, cicadas are dumb, and they'll climb anything they find, and the bridle tool gets very close to the ground. I have it hanging over the edges. And so somehow cicadas, which are dumb as F, climb up and get stuck inside of the bridle tool. And I've had to free like 6 cicadas from my bridle tool tents that just can't figure out how to get out, even though they climbed up in it. So cicadas can get in it, but I haven't seen any thus far. I haven't seen any cabbage butterflies. I haven't seen any cucumber beetles. And I've only seen one so far of squash bugs. And so I think it's working. Fingers crossed that it does work. And for the cucumbers, you know, I planted the seeds directly in the soil in a container, and I put just a layer of bridle tool over the top of it until they sprouted. And now that they've sprouted, I put a little stick in, not the permanent trellising thing, but a little stick so they have a little bit of space. And then once they start really getting going, probably after this cold spell is over, I will do a proper trellis and put the bridle tool around that, and we'll see how it goes. But really, last year I didn't get any cucumbers because the cucumber beetles basically put disease on them and killed them like instantly. So I'm really, really hoping this works. And I think it's a lot less maintenance, even though it's a pain to set up. I think it's a lot less maintenance than having to put diatomaceous earth or BT oil or neem oil or any of that stuff on it, reapplied every time it stops raining, and worrying about killing the bees if they land on it and all of that. I think just like avoiding them being able to propagate, to be able to breed on my plants is like the best option. So fingers crossed, guys. This is plan B, and hopefully it works. Your kittens keep the moths at bay. Well, that's good. That is awesome. Did I miss anything else? Hi, Mary Gleeden. Good to see you. Did I miss anybody? Come in. I know I probably missed a million people because I just talk. Moved all your cukes all the way to the front of the house, turned your front flower bed into a cucumber herb garden. Ooh, that actually probably be good. I think dill, I read somewhere, I think that dill is a good companion plant for cucumbers. I think it helps their flavor. Definitely Google that, because that's just in the back of my mind. I could be wrong. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Oh, I saw my first ladybug today, which made me very happy. Yes, I will. So, okay, I've been thinking about that. The question is, both Stormy Wind and Monica, Katie's Garden, asked, like, will you have to hand pollinate? And the answer is yes. And I've been thinking about it, and I'm okay with that because that's what I did last year. So the cucumbers I'm growing are straight 8 cucumbers. I might also try some mini white ones if the straight 8s do well and this bridle tool thing works. Because cucumbers grow fast. Like, you don't have, it's not like peppers where you have to have them in the ground by a certain time to get anything from them. And so I think I'm going to do that anyway. But the straight 8 cucumbers can actually be pollinated for their own plant. You don't have to have multiple of them to be able to pollinate. So I can take the male flowers, get a little paintbrush, and use the pollen to fertilize the female flowers once there's enough of them. And with the squash, I have 2 of my Caserta zucchini growing, and those are green zucchini. They're also supposed to be vine borer resistant, which is why I'm growing only that kind this year. But I plan to hand pollinate them as well as hand pollinating the, Oh, I'm forgetting the kind of squash I have. It's a winter Lakota squash. And I probably will cross-pollinate between the flowers and things, so I will not save the seeds for any of them because, I don't want a Caserta Lakota squash next year, But whatever it takes to actually have squash grow, I'm okay with that. I mean, you guys don't realize how much time I spend in my garden, probably. And it's probably not a healthy level, but I think yesterday I probably spent 3 to 4 hours out there. And I go out, I have a little chair and table set up. I put a cup, like my Tang flavored water or whatever. And I'll just sit there. I'll have music playing or audiobook playing. Right now I'm listening to The Lord of the Rings. I read them as a teenager to my baby sister, but I'm now visiting. And you guys, by the way, Lord of the Rings is all about gardening and vegetables, potatoes, and the simple, lovely life of gardens. And it's a whole new world listening to The Lord of the Rings because he talks about plants and I know what he's talking about, like certain flowers and certain vining bushes and things. And I'm like, I know what those are. Like it makes it so much better to be a gardener and to read Lord of the Rings, or listen to it. And so I'll just go out and I'll listen to something, music or audiobook, and I'll sit in the chair and I'll look into the garden and I'll just stare at it and think about it. And then I'll go do something, maybe spend 5-10 minutes. Then I'll go sit in my chair some more. Then I'll go do something else. And I'll maybe spend a total of like 1 hour's worth of work for that 3 hours that I'm out there or whatever. But I love being out there, and and there's people that walk by that say hi to me every day, and like we talk, and yeah, it's a really nice place to be. And as long as the mosquitoes don't get too bad this year, because they can get bad sometimes. Potatoes, boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. Yes. Rye 55's root says, vine borers, last year I placed cloves of garlic in my soil near the root and inside the vine where I had to perform open surgery, followed by wrapped with floral tape. It helped. Yeah, and I did that last year too. I got in with tweezers and pulled the sucker out, or I stuck a nail in and turned him to mush. I know that sounds disgusting. And I had one of my Caserta zucchini, actually, while they were still in the container, actually split. The root, the stem split. So they do have hollow stems. And I'm not sure what the vine borers do to them. They probably eat the juice that's around the stem, the actual food part for the plant. But it seems to be doing fine. Yeah, me and my neighbors. There's this one couple that lives like a block and a half down from us, and she always wears a hat. And the other day she had like a little, it was an umbrella, but it what's the right word for when it's a sun protector umbrella? I'm totally blanking. Oh my gosh, my nerd self is forgetting what it's called. Parasol, thank you. She had like a little umbrella, and I told her you can get UV protected umbrellas. Like when I saw in Hong Kong, all the umbrellas had UV layers inside, because they walk around with umbrellas for protecting their skin in Asia. But they walk by every day, and we talk about vaccinations. We talk about gardening. Like I gave them, I think I gave them some. What did I give them? I gave them some flower plants in a milk jug, and like 2 days later, my dog was barking, and they had brought the milk jug back to me in a little bag. It was so sweet of them. But yeah, it's really nice to share with neighbors and to get to know them, and sitting out there talking with people and kind of knowing their life is nice. See, I actually own a couple parasols. Whenever I go to the Maryland Renaissance Festival, I grew up going because my mom used to sing at the Renaissance Festival in a choir called the Renaissance Revelers, and I would buy a parasol every time because the sun, they have their festival in like late August, early September, and the sun just beats down on you. And they sell parasols for like $20. So I have a stack of them. I think most of them are broken by now, but I have like, and they're usually a little bit see-through to let a little bit of light through, but protect most of it. So that wasn't a gardening thing, but let's see what else we got going on. Oh, I lost my page, guys. The tool definitely does help with the squash bugs. It isn't 100%, but it definitely helps. I use it every year. Good. Yeah, I figure it'll give them just like a good start, right, at life, and then they, the squash is probably, it's not the pollination that I worry about actually for the squash and cucumber. It's not having enough space with the tool for them to really bush out. And at some point, I'm either going to have to do extra poles around it to give them more space as they grow up. It's right now it's teepee shaped, so they have plenty of space down here, but soon they will run out of space up there. Even if I like connect it to, instead of having it grow sideways, I have it go up. At some point I'm gonna have to widen it. So I haven't figured out those things, but I mean, I guess you guys probably do this too, but for me, personally, I'm someone who likes to plan ahead. I'm someone who likes to have everything possibly figured out 6 months in advance. Like when my husband and I got engaged, I had all of our wedding planned within 6 days, 2 weeks, something like that. I did get a new contractor for our DJ, but yeah, we had a wedding that was coming up a year later, and within the first week, I think I had everything done. Maybe 2 weeks, because we did have to go get a cake person. But yeah. So I like to plan ahead is my point. But with gardening, I'm learning that while I like to plan ahead, I am trying to take things one step at a time. Because with gardening, things can be so overwhelming, especially as a new gardener. So overwhelming if you try to know it all instantly, if you try to have everything figured out instantly ahead of doing it. And I have found that for me, a way to not stress in the garden is to take things one step at a time, So right now I have figured out how to protect my zucchini and squash and cucumbers using the tool. But when they get bigger, I'm going to have to come up with a new plan. So, yeah, I think it's a good practice, and so far it's worked well for me. Norma Living Good, what do you think about succession sowing to try to keep ahead of bugs? I think that can help. The one problem that comes to mind for me for cucumbers and cucumber beetles is that once the blight or whatever thing it is that they carry on their juices and on their skin and feet that cause the disease for the cucumbers, once that gets in the plant and gets in the soil, you can't plant anything else in that location without having blight. Last year I learned that lesson. I had a plant die, I pulled it out, I tossed some new compost on top, I planted a seed, it came up and died within like a couple of weeks. Maybe even, I don't think it even made it a couple of weeks. Like it sprouted and died. And so I think if it's something having to do with a disease or blight, succession planning is not going to fix that problem. Potentially with vine borers and that kind of thing, succession planning could help. I'll say the other thing I did this year is I used fresh soil for the cucumbers and for all the squash and zucchini. I mixed my own soil like I do now for my containers or for my pots. I mixed all the ingredients and it's all fresh stuff because I didn't want to risk there being any more than it would be in, the vendors I buy from, who knows what they had at their houses or their factories. There could be eggs in that soil, but to the extent I can control it so it's not from my property, I felt like starting with fresh soil also helps reduce the likelihood of them sprouting because they will overwinter. They will overwinter locally as well, like in grasses and things nearby, bushes and things nearby like that. I've heard. I might be getting that wrong. Something overwinters nearby that's not good. And so that's another reason tool might help. Yeah. Mary Glidden. Yeah, using the tool with your little seedlings so the birds don't eat them So this morning, our raspberries were not pink. And I looked out about 20 minutes when I was eating my dinner, about 20 minutes before this started, and I saw a red raspberry. I am going to go out and I'm going to put bridal tool over that whole area. And I might even do a sheet. Someone said they put a sheet over it because it helps keep them from being able to eat the berries. And I do have that netting stuff that people will put over their berries to protect them. But I've heard horror stories of snakes and birds getting caught in it. And I just do not have the heart to risk that. Now, there are some raspberries that are close to the ground that I know I'm going to compete with the groundhogs for. And so I'm not going to worry about those. But the ones that are higher up that they'd have to actually work to get to, I'm hoping I can get for myself. The other thing is we have a mulberry tree, and it is producing berries right now, and I'm hoping that will keep. I've harvested and eaten some of them, and I have a slight allergy to tree fruit, and it turns out the mulberries also are one of them. So I could probably make mulberry pie if I wanted to, but at this moment, I'm letting the birds and squirrels and groundhogs have whatever fell. And the groundhogs haven't climbed that tree. Mom, you remember we had groundhogs that would climb out to the end of the apple trees, and like the branches would be almost on the ground when we were a kid. And I haven't seen them do that, but I think that's because this tree is too small for them to feel brave on, because they'd probably break the branches if they tried climbing on it. But the squirrels and birds love it. So I'm hoping that will help distract them from the raspberries. Because honestly, guys, out of all the fruit out there, lemons and raspberries are like my number 1 and 2. I just love them. And they're one of those crops that I can't grow lemons in Maryland. You know, you can have a tree and bring it in or whatever. That's too much for me. But, raspberries are super expensive at the store. And so for me, having raspberries was just something I love. And also at the store, when you get them, often there's a couple rotten ones in the bottom, right? Like you're always risking that random moldy layer. So getting raspberries from my garden for me is like pure joy, like just pure joy. And last year was the first year I had them. And I got maybe like a dozen raspberries, maybe 2 dozen raspberries, because every day I'd go out and pluck them. But the bushes are full of them this year. So I'm looking forward to lots of raspberries in my salads all over the place. Chrissy says, I got my a snake in. Oh. Well, hey, at least you let it out. That's good. That's good, Chrissy. Yeah. Had a snake in the mousetrap. That's, that's the thing. My husband's a softie too. We're both softies. Like, he doesn't like spiders. And right now we have a resident spider in the shower. I think it's moved on now, but we can't kill it. We just don't have the guts to kill it. I might have to have mom and dad come do it for us or something. I'm not afraid to kill them. I just don't want to kill them. I like that I have spiders in here to eat the bugs that will be in the house. If I get a fly in here, I want that spider to get that fly more than I'm worried about the spider. Oh, I'm glad it survived, Chrissy. That is good. Ooh, seedless grapes. That sounds great. Jen says, a couple of years ago, I was going to my car and pulled my overgrown ivy over the retaining wall, and I pulled a snake with it. You were both startled. Yeah. Yeah, I'd be like... Yeah, no. I haven't seen any snakes in this yard yet. I'm sure there are plenty. And I hope there are some, because we definitely could use some help containing the rabbit and other vermin populations. I don't know if snakes eat rabbits. Maybe baby ones, probably. I don't know. But I love rabbits. They're so cute. And I will say this. Rabbits tend to leave things alone once they're big enough, except maybe lettuces. And so I find that generally... And they might munch a little bit, and they definitely ate some of my peas in the front yard. But they're not like voracious eaters like some other critters are. So I don't have as big of a problem this year with rabbits. I say this year because who knows, I might rue the day and next year actually really have a problem with them. But so far, it hasn't been too bad. So what are some tricks you guys learned or some challenges you've had that maybe I can help you with or laugh at or share the success of? I'd love to hear. While I'm looking through my note to see what else I can mention. Yes, Dad, I know. I think one of the things I'm going to try to do next year for the problem in the backyard with the lettuces that are going back that are being eaten by critters, I think I have a couple of options to protect my lettuces. 3 options that I can see. One, I haven't invested in any, but I'm considering investing in. You know how what's his name from Epic Gardening, Eric Espiritu, has these huge metal beds that are like 4 feet tall before you actually, like the top of them, maybe 3.5 feet tall. And I think if I got those and used those in the backyard, not only would they get more sun because of the shade issue with the tall fence and other stuff, but I think also, the likelihood of voles or other things climbing up. And it's also harder to climb up for a groundhog or a rabbit or something like that. So I might invest like 1 per year. I might buy like 1 next year and try it out. Oh, yay, Chrissy. Please do a video on it. Along the River Homestead, please do a video on it, how it goes. If it keeps critters out, I will be, I will be excited to see that, how it goes. Yeah, and I mean, I can fill the bottom with like sticks and rubble and stuff like that, and then the top half can be, good quality soil. But, yeah. Epic Gardening, Eric Espiritu is actually one of my gateways into gardening. He has, I don't know how active he is on it now, but he used to have a really active blog podcast. He used to have a really active podcast. And when I drove for Lyft, when I drove for Lyft during my regular day job, I would just listen to his gardening podcast episodes. Like my poor riders got an education in gardening in 20 minutes. But, listening to that really helped. And he had people who talked about companion planting, who talked about foraging, who talked about everything you want to do. So definitely check him out. He's really knowledgeable, really worth checking out. Mary Glidden, I'm just a little frustrated. It's just a little frustrating gardening in zone 4. I'm just now getting things in, and before I know it, we will have a frost. Yeah, I don't know how you do it in the short gardening time zones. I don't know how you handle that because you have such a short period to grow things. I guess maybe the best trick is just to find things that grow fast, like have a shorter time on them. There are some varieties that grow much faster than others. I think smaller produce, like smaller producing fruit, can do better too, I'm guessing, just because it doesn't take as long to make the big ones. But yes, he's on Instagram a lot more. And I heard he had some, like, I don't know if it fell through, but I heard he had some like TV show deal or something he announced that's coming, or book deal or something. Yeah, I really like him. He's really sincere too, which I appreciate about him. Like, he's not afraid to show mistakes and stuff like that, which I'm all about. It's real, guys. It's really real with me. Newly zoned 6B, 7A. Oh, nice. Yeah, you relocated. That's right. Yes. Ooh, I don't know about his assistant gardener. Oh, I don't think I've checked out enough lately. I'm going to have to do that. Okay, see, I haven't been up on following him enough. Yeah. So I'm going to try. So I was talking about my 3 options. So one is just to get a bed that's higher. Because I'm going to get a second, like one of those metal beds, I'm also going to take the wood from my one bed and double it up so instead of 6 inches tall, it'll be 12 inches tall. And then for the chicken wire, right now I just have it like hooked in to nails like every 6 inches or every 12 inches. And I think I'm going to have to come up with a more secure system around the bottom, because a lot of times I saw gaps where they just crawled up. They didn't need to climb over the fence. They just crawled up between the gaps there. So I think if I can just seal up the gaps and raise it a little bit, that will help some. Okay, cool. Thank you. I'll check them out. That sounds interesting. The hermit gardener. Ooh, that sounds very garden hermit. I like that idea. And the third option is, well, actually I have 4. So the third option is to just move everything to the front bed. Now I'd still have to, in the spring, you know, I have my spring crops, and I'd still have to worry about rabbits in the front bed, but I wouldn't have to worry as much about the groundhogs. And I think we also might have mice or rats that live in the area, because I've seen droppings and stuff in the shed before. I don't know the size of the critter, but it's something that looks like a mouse or a rat poo. So I'm going to, you know, I think moving it to the front yard will give them less easy access. So that might be another option. And then the fourth option for me is, and maybe, have any of you tried these? Let me know if you have, is the green stock. It's popular. They get all the YouTubers to promote it with a 10% off or $10 off thing or whatever. And, but I just wonder if green stock would work, because, you know, if for those who don't know, it's like layered, upright garden where you water it from the top and it puts all the water all the way down, and it's turnable if you put it on a turnstile thing. And it's just basically vertical gardening. And I was already considering vertical gardening more for next year as one of my goals. But I think a vertical green stock, if I plant stuff at the bottom that the rabbits don't like so much, which I'm not quite sure, maybe nasturtiums, they don't really touch the nasturtiums. Maybe it's too peppery for them. You know, plant nasturtiums in the bottom so they'll taste it and not want it, and then have like the lettuces up at the top. I think I'll try all 4 of those and then see which one works. Make for a good video series, right, guys? We'll see. my varmint control options. And I think where all of this comes from, for me, is that I read somewhere, I heard someone say somewhere, something about their theory of gardening is to try not to cause suffering for animals and critters. You know what a softie I am. Obviously, I can't kill a spider in my own shower, right? I don't wash my face, though. So I can keep an eye on them the whole time. I wash it out of the shower. But, you know, I really don't want to have to kill things. I don't want to have to kill bugs through diatomaceous earth or neem oil or BT oil unless I have to, unless I can't find any other solutions. And so I'm trying to find as many humane solutions that will just prevent them from getting to my food as possible. Because really, I want poison or other things to be the last option. But I have no judgment for anyone who uses that stuff or who goes to those options, because it's an individual choice for everybody, right? It's up to everybody to decide what to do. Oh, we've all made those mistakes before. Yes, it's so true. Oh, thank you, Felix. That's very nice. Actually, you guys, my hair is getting so long. It's ridiculously long. I have not cut it since COVID started, and it was like here. Now it's like, it's why it's up all the time, honestly. Like, not to talk about hair or anything, but my hair is so long. I don't own any hair bands anymore. It's long enough I can tie it in a knot and it'll stay. It's true. Oh, thank you. Oh my God, guys, I think I just got a spam caller. No, just some text messages. Terrible time growing for basil for reason. Any tips? I'm in zone 70. Okay. So actually, that is one thing for me for winter sowing. I have not had success growing basil in winter sowing, other than I did get the large leaf basil to grow this year. But 2 years in a row, winter sowing has not worked for me for the sweet basil, for the Thai basil. I got some red basil or purple basil last year out of winter sowing. And I think I got the Tulsi holy basil, because that's more of an herb than a basil, to grow from winter sowing. But they grow so easy from seed in your container, like in a windowsill, that honestly, I just think in the future, like I'm just going to grow them indoors. There's so many other things. Like I got lavender grow using winter sowing. If I can get lavender to grow in a winter sowing container, but not basil, that is a sign to me that basil just doesn't like growing in winter sowing containers for me. So I think they really like warm soil, and I think they won't sprout until it's warm enough. And it's quite possible that it's wet and moist enough for long enough that they just rot or just don't get through or just give up. Who knows? Yeah, I think basil for next year. And the other things that I direct sowed this year, that I'm glad I direct sowed, was I tried winter sowing beets and radishes, and they didn't do that great. And it could have been operator error on my part, but it definitely, the ones that I direct sowed did very well. And so I don't feel like next year, feel free to try it if you want, by the way, because you might have great success. I think every location does differently with different plants. So I don't want to discourage anyone from trying any type. But for me, for next year, I'm going to do radishes direct sown seeds and beets direct sown seeds. The other things I direct sowed this year were my sugar snap peas, because I just don't think they like being transplanted that much. There have been people who have had great success doing it, but when I transplanted them last year, they did not do well. Now, to be fair, I dunked them in freezing cold water to separate the seedlings. So I put them in shock, so that was my fault. But still, I think that peas generally just do fine growing in the ground. You don't really need winter sowing to help them. They shoot up fast. They do great, and they like the cold, so you don't have to protect them as much. Other things I didn't winter sow this year. I got to look at my list now. My green beans and my spinach, because the spinach that I got said it will bolt if you transplant it. So I thought, oh, so that is the thing. That is a fair thing. Gal at RPI. That is a fair point. So there is a process called no transplant winter sowing, in which you basically use domes, like no transplant domes, over them, and you plant them in the soil, in the container you're going to grow them in, and you use that as the mini greenhouse instead of using a milk jug. I have not personally done that yet. I think that is expert level 202 instead of 101, so maybe I'll try it next year. But yes, if you're growing containers, even in the ground, you could potentially use that to help you. I think that's a fair point. Let me think what else. Well, this has been going on for a while. Oh, we still have, wow, 38 watching. Thank you so much, guys. Make sure to smash that like button and comment. I love hearing from you. One thing I was surprised about so far for the spring harvest was surprised how well radishes did. And I'm very excited. And guys, I bought like 6 more varieties to grow this fall and next year. I'm just like all about radishes because it was successful. The other thing is the beets are still taking a long time. I think it's because I planted them a little too close together. And we do have 2 neighbors across the street who use pesticides, who have someone come and spray their lawn. And so far, I've gotten one of them to text me when the pesticide person's coming, including the guy comes and knocks on my door. Next time, I'm going to give him a jar of jelly to thank him. He gives me warning. I put the plastic over my plants. I'm good. But the other one hasn't quite. Hey, Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And Maritza Rivera, nice to see you. If I didn't say hi already, which I might have. But my neighbors, they spray. And within an hour of their truck, the one who I can't get because it's rented, the homeowner, the people who rent are rarely there, they're college kids. They don't really know what to do. And I asked them to ask the landlord to give them a heads up when the spray is coming. But someone came and sprayed, and the truck left before I could say something to the guy about telling me next time. Reba, will you stop whining about it next time? Within an hour, 20 of the beet leaves were white and falling, and they were killed by the poison. And I tore them out, make sure they don't get to the base of the plant, and I tore out everything that looked like it was damaged. But my neighbors have the right to spray pesticides to control their weeds in their yard, just like I have the right to grow the weeds. And so I'm not going to tell them they can't do it, but I certainly want them to give me a heads up. So I am a little bit worried that part of the reason the beets are a little bit behind is because I know some of them were damaged by the poison. And I tried to remove all the ones that were, but, that could also be a reason. But I've been surprised because I wanted that space to plant peppers, and now there's this whole strip of beets, and I love beets so much that I really don't want to pull them before they're all ready. So I'm going to give them another 2 weeks, and then maybe I'll just plant some fast flowers there or something, because I need to get those peppers in the ground. I have like 4 or 5 peppers I still need to get in the ground. Oh, hi, Scully's House of Thrillers. Nice to see you here. I saw you on Adrian's live yesterday. Yeah, had that problem with neighbors spraying last year. And like I said, I get it. Everybody wants to have their dream, right? They want to have their green lawn, and everybody has a different view of what that should be. But I can't grow my vegetables in the backyard behind the fence. There just isn't enough sun. I don't have the opportunity. So I think one thing I might do this year, they always come around the beginning of the month. So we're getting close to the beginning of the month. I think I'm going to I like my garden to be pretty, but I think I'm going to get ugly, and I'm going to get I've read that having like a 6-foot fence, wood fence, can help block drift, chemical drift, pesticide drift. And I think I'm going to get some plywood or a big plastic sheets and put them on the fence I already have on the inside, just to keep the drift from happening. And it may block some of the sun getting in. Maybe if I do the plastic along the fence, if it's only for like 2 weeks, it'll still let the sun in, but hopefully it'll stop some of the drift. But my tomatoes are going to be taller than that fence. And last year they had the leaf curl that I'm pretty sure was from pesticide. So there's only so much you can do when you live in a city. It's a sad fact, but it's true. Yeah, and it gets in the water system too. That's the other thing. Yeah, I mean, guys, I remember in college spraying bug killer in my apartment and not opening the windows. I remember doing that stuff. I was probably poisoning myself, and I had no idea how bad it was for you. But once I started writing about chemicals and the EPA and climate change and the environment, I stopped doing that because I found out just how damaging it can be to the human system. It really isn't meant to be ingested or breathed in. Yeah. How is my container sitting doing? It's doing good. Things are starting to sprout, and I made, I don't know if you were here at the beginning or not, when it's raining and cold outside, the cicadas are quiet. So this morning I went out and I made my garden tour video while they were quiet, because I was thinking, okay, if cicadas are being so loud, how am I going to make this video? I'm going to have to be like music only or something. I can't make someone else listen to the sound of cicadas for a 15-minute garden tour. I just can't do that to you guys. So they were quiet this morning. So I was like, ooh, it's not going to be sunny, but it won't kill anybody or make them cringe and have to go take a shower. So keep an eye out for the garden tour. Let's see. Am I missing any comments? Ear curdling sound. It's true. They are, in fact, so I really don't mean this to be the cicada episode, but I read an article. One of my friends who's dealing with these as well posted on Facebook. I think it was in Scientific American or something about how cicadas pee a lot. Like, they eat tree sap. Of course, they're going to pee a lot. And so, when you're walking under trees and it's not raining and you get some water drops on you, it might be cicada pee during a cicada season. And I was reading this on my phone as literally I felt a drop hit my cheek and fall onto my shoulder. And I was like, and I looked up and there was like 3 cicadas like right above me on the tree. So now I keep my mouth shut when I'm walking under cicada trees, and my chair is under the cicada tree, and I try to keep my mouth shut and not look up at the tree or anything. I mean, I have glasses on, so that helps. But, I mean, I imagine cicada pee is probably pretty harmless. I mean, it's tree sap, right? But still, it's not that great of an idea. So I always rinse my produce now, but I'm especially rinsing my produce after this season because those cicadas are everywhere. Another use for my parasol, exactly, Daryl. I totally got peed on. It is so true. Yeah, apparently look up the article. It's so it's so funny. And you know what? Yes, guys, I did smell my shoulder to see if it smelled different. It didn't. I couldn't tell. And yes, I wiped it off, of course, but I was curious. It didn't smell any different. But now I'm very careful when I walk around. If I get dripped on and it hasn't rained that day, it's a whole new experience. But the cicadas, they're sweet. But this was what I was actually trying to tell you. I was sitting under the cicada tree, the Japanese maple tree. And I heard an individual cicada making its sound, and I hear them sometimes, like they get angry if I move something that they're under or around, right? They make a screaming noise at me. And I heard a cicada make a sound, and it was like, I think it's like the sound from, what is the movie? The Will Smith movie, July 4th, Independence Day, right? That clicking sound. I think that's the movie. That clicking sound, that insectal clicking sound. That was 100% the sound I heard. And I normally think it's a comforting sound, but that definitely sounded like intimidating to me. Yeah. Audra, you wonder if you get peed on by birds. Well, actually, so not to get super science nerdy, but since we're going that direction anyway, with birds, they actually pee and poop in the same thing. What they let out is pee and poop. So if you get pooped on by a bird, you also technically got peed on by a bird. Sorry, but it's true. It all comes out from the same place together. I used to have a pet cockatiel, and if she drank too much water, then she did pee. But oh yeah, chickens are the same way. Yes, exactly, Chrissy. Yes. So I think I think overall this spring has been pretty successful for me. I'm pretty proud of how I was able to pivot. Sorry, this Tang is apparently giving me the burps. I was able to pivot when we had the pesticide treatment and I had to plant all of my flowers in containers. It did cost more money than I expected, to spend this year, but luckily we had a little bit extra left over from that government bonus that came along. And I feel like I was able to put up the fence and the gate. I was able to make things relatively pretty. I was able to grow some good produce for the spring, even though I had the failures in the backyard with the critters eating all my lettuces. I did get some harvests of lettuce out of it before they got to it. And I think it's important, and I'm sure all of you know this, right? But I think it's important that when you're gardening, you don't expect 100% success. Like for me, I would have been happy just with the radishes, right? Like just having the radishes made me happy. But I'm also going to get beets out of it and sugar snap peas, which are now in flower. And so I feel like, you know, if you have some success, hold on to that and carry that joy over past the failures and just continue to learn and grow. And that's really, to me, you know, what gardening is all about is the problem solving, the adventure, the fun, the experience of learning about gardening and nature and how it works. And yeah, I'm really, really enjoying things. Have I ever tried? Oh, something else is peeing on you. It very well could be. Have you ever tried roasting radishes? Yes, I tried roasting radishes. I have a video on it, but I didn't do it right because I didn't roast them long enough. And also, I didn't make sure they were dry before I roasted them. I rinsed them and then cut them and put them in the thing. And so they basically steamed instead of roasted. So I definitely recommend roasting. It still tasted great. My husband ate it. And I have to tell you guys, I know a lot of people out there don't have supportive family members for gardening. And I really appreciate that my husband gives me the freedom to do what I want with the garden. Sometimes he'll tell me if it doesn't look quite right or like whatever. And of course, I'll have him give input on what I'm going to grow. Like if it's something I know he is enjoying, I'll say, oh, should I try this variety, whatever. But he is willing to try. He doesn't like, as you know, if you watch the channel, he doesn't like onions or celery. But he's willing to try anything. And the other day, I brought in radishes, harvested a few of the radishes. I boiled them up, peeled the skin off, put some salt on, sliced them up, put some salt on them, took a plate of the first serving in for my husband and I with forks, and we ate that first serving together to sample the first harvest of the beets. And he loves beets. He enjoys it. He's willing to try just about any vegetable I put in front of him as long as it's not one of the two categories I mentioned. And I really appreciate having someone to share that experience with, because gardening is also fun when it's shared, right? And being able to share it with people, including you guys, is just really makes it a lot of fun. All right, so I think I'm going to wrap it up. It has been an hour and a half. I've really enjoyed hearing your comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure to hit the like button. And if you aren't already a subscriber, please do subscribe. If you haven't tried winter sowing and you're curious about it, check out my Winter Sowing 101 series that Chrissy's been posting plenty of links to. And Chrissy, have you posted the link to your channel? Please do if you haven't already, so people can check you out as well. I love best sense of humor out there, man, guys. She's a great gardener and also a great time. And thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I am just always so pleased to have this community. It really, really is a wonderful experience. All right, signing off. Now, how do I do this?